I think the biggest mistake that some of you guys out there make as amateur gamblers, and I don't say that in a way to degrade you or talk down about your talents as gamblers, but the difference between many of you and a guy like me is that I do this 7 days a week, 365 days a year. A lot of you think about college football maybe on Friday and Saturdays and then don't think about it again till the following weekend. Is that you overlook two of the most critical factors when it comes to handicapping college football, and then again in college basketball as well. And those two factors are the letdown and the look-ahead situations. Never forget that you're handicapping a sport that is played by kids that are 17 to 22 years old. They are always going to be affected by the letdown and the look-ahead. Listen, even professional athletes are affected to a certain extent by the letdown and look-ahead situations. So when I handicap a card, right, I'm narrowing down that big board until I can slice it down and find that handful of games. But there's another collection of games which I look at, and I'm looking for those letdown and look-ahead situations for games to avoid and games that I may consider adding to that little collection that I may want to bet on. So with that in mind, I wanted to run through some of those games today. Games that I'm not particularly using, but maybe you didn't consider these games as perhaps situations that you might want to be avoiding. For example, Wisconsin today is a 24-point home favorite against Northwestern. Listen, the Badgers are clearly a superior team. But you may have to wonder, are they still celebrating after beating the hell out of Michigan last week? Because that was a monstrous win for that program. Are they still going to be hungover today? Central Florida. The way they lost that game to Pittsburgh last week. First to lose a game for Central Florida, but then to lose it in that fashion. Well, listen, they're a 43-point favorite against Central Florida, or against Connecticut today. They should be Connecticut, really, by 75 points. Will they? Do they? Are they inspired to do so? After the way they lost that game, how did they get up off the floor with the way they lost that game at Pittsburgh? SMU, a team that I've been riding, a team that I've been giving you as a free selection here for the past couple of weeks, off to a great undefeated start. But they beat TCU. That was a monstrous win for this program. Now you're asking them to lay 7.5 at South Florida. I've told you repeatedly that I think Charlie Strong stinks as a head coach, okay? Good defensive coordinator. As a head coach, he's always overmatched, and the South Florida Bulls are nothing. But now you're asking SMU to go on the road after that monstrous win against TCU and lay 7.5 at South Florida. This is a prime letdown spot for SMU, even though they are the superior team. You've got Buffalo, a 2.5-point favorite at Miami of Ohio. Now, this is a meaningless little game. But Buffalo, for the second straight year, beat the hell out of Temple last week. Does Buffalo show up again? This is a Buffalo team that played lousy up until it beat Temple last week. How about Auburn? 9.5 to 10-point favorite tonight at home against Mississippi State. But Auburn's coming off that big 28-20 win in College Station against Texas A&M. How about Appalachian State? A 16-point favorite today at home against Coastal Carolina. Now, granted, Coastal Carolina's won 3 straight wins. Have they beaten anybody? Kansas, Norfolk State, and UMass? No. But App State, after the big win against North Carolina, remember, App State is there in Boone, North Carolina. So you just knocked off an in-state power from the ACC, and you did it on the road. And true, you're on a 14-4-2 ATS run. You've won 18 of your last 20 games straight up, but now you're coming back home after knocking off Big Brother, and you're being asked to lay 16.5 points? That's a difficult situation. Here's another one. Utah State last week goes to San Diego State. I think San Diego State had won 10 of the last 11 in that series, and Utah State wins outright. And now you're asking Utah State to come home and lay 23.5 points in the ultimate sandwich situation, because next week Utah State goes to Baton Rouge. Now, you're taking on a Colorado State team that has no defense, lost its starting quarterback, has its top running back, I think, doubtful for this game. Utah State should win this game handily. Do you think Utah State is focused on Colorado State coming off the win at San Diego State with LSU next week? This is a stay-away game. Because are you going to really bet Colorado State for as bad as the Rams have been over the past year and a half, plus, 23.5 points? You can have that game. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And then finally, you've got UCLA as a 6.5-point favorite at Arizona. I can tell you personally from losing last week with Washington State that UCLA won that game, overcoming a 143-point deficit in the second half, but UCLA is still no good. Arizona is not much better. But do you feel that confident taking UCLA plus 6.5 points? Keep in mind, the Bruins have not covered back-to-back road games since 2004. Let me ask you, what were you doing in 2004? I rest my case. Okay, so those are some of the things that you should consider today. If you're looking for a big play today, me personally, I have a Raise the Bar 20-dime release. 35-point burial blowout of the year. It goes on the early card. There's one game today that I think this is the game that's going to have the largest margin of victory. I love it. It's half price. You can find that over on the site. FYI, the coupon code is blowout. The other one I want to mention is Jack Brayman, who has made $10 bettors a little over $21,000 over the past 544 days. So what is that? About 14, 15 months. 11th ever 200-dime double your wager college football release since his site debut. Iowa State at Baylor. It goes at 3:30 Eastern time. Twice as strong as his 100-dimer on Wisconsin last Saturday. You get it for over half price off by using coupon code 200dimer, 200DIMER. You can get all your discounts and promos over on the homepage. Let's get to your complimentary plays. Here's a game that I find interesting in terms of a letdown look-ahead situation that hit this team hard. It's my alma mater. Temple last week lost at Buffalo. Oh my God, they played awful at Buffalo. But is it because Temple got in a letdown situation because the week prior they hosted Maryland, beat the Terrapins after the Terps got off to that great 2-0 start, beat Maryland 20-17, and let's be honest, they didn't play that great against Maryland, but they won that game. They go to Buffalo and they just showed nothing. They came out flat. They played poorly. Their run defense was awful. Their quarterback, Anthony Russo, 3 interceptions, 3 touchdowns, but 3 picks, 4 turnovers for all for Temple. They got outrushed 217-31 in that game. They lost that game 38-22, but listen, they were down 38-10. They were never in it. So now they're coming back home, taking on their ex-coach, Jeff Collins, who was their head man for 2 years before he took the job at Georgia Tech this year. Georgia Tech comes into this game off a bye. What did Georgia Tech do before that bye? They were a 33-point favorite at home against the Citadel, and they lost that game outright in overtime 27-24 2 Saturdays ago. Not the way to make friends in Atlanta, Jeff Collins. I can tell you that right now, having lived there for 9 years and went to many Georgia Tech games. The Bulldogs in that game, that's the Citadel, had time of possession 41 minutes and accumulated 350 yards against that Georgia Tech defense that just couldn't get itself off the field. But a byproduct of Temple's poor performance in the loss at Buffalo is that they're only an 8.5-point favorite. If they had won at Buffalo, they'd probably be laying 13.5 in this game. I think this is a great game to get a refocused Temple team and take them at this cheap bargain basement price. Georgia Tech is a team, remember, they're no longer that triple option attack. Jeff Collins has installed more of a pro-type offense. He doesn't have a quarterback, really. They don't have a defense, they being Georgia Tech. I think this is a prime opportunity to take Temple, looking for a refocused effort, as I said, and look for them to win this game handily at home. Another play I like today is going to be Clemson. Yes, I know they're a 27-point favorite, but why the hell not? I mean, is Clemson giving you any reason not to think they can beat the heck out of North Carolina? I know North Carolina opened the season with 2 wins against South Carolina, Miami, and Florida, but let me ask you this. What have the Gamecocks and the Hurricanes shown you since those 2 games? And since then, the Tar Heels lost to Wake Forest and, of course, got obliterated by Appalachian State. Okay, it wasn't an obliteration in terms of the final score, but you shouldn't be losing to App State especially not when you're playing in Chapel Hill. This Clemson team has a defense that has already racked up 16 sacks, and I think they're going to put a hell of a lot of pressure on the freshman quarterback Sam Howell for North Carolina. I think that Clemson's run defense is going to be able to stymie the North Carolina rushing attack. I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to pick apart a North Carolina secondary that is banged up and that's going to be without at least one starter, and if not two, in that secondary. And I think that Clemson's run game with Travis Etienne, who's averaging 7.5 yards per carry with limited action. He's only carried the ball 53 times in 4 games this year because Clemson hasn't needed to play their starters that much while rolling to that 4-0 start. I think that he and his backup, Dixon, who is averaging 6.7 yards per carry, will have a very productive game against a North Carolina run defense that is allowing 172 yards and almost 4.6 yards per carry to opposing backs this season. Also keep this in mind. Clemson 16 sacks. North Carolina's offensive line has allowed 16 sacks. I think that Clemson, who is averaging 524 yards per total offense this year per game, that's only 3 short of what they were averaging last year. And that offense, again, through 4 games, really hasn't been extended. They haven't really played a full game because of the magnitude of the blowouts. I think they can name the score here today, and I would go ahead and lay the 27 points. Another game I like is going to be, let's see. I'm going to go with Washington, minus the 10.5 at home against USC. I know that Matt Fink beat me when I had Utah last Friday night. I don't think Matt Fink is going to be able to beat me today. Washington comes into this game with the 1 loss coming against California, but California had a great defense. USC does not. In fact, USC's secondary is going to be without 2 of its starters today. It's going to be missing its best defensive back. It's going to be missing 1 safety, 1 cornerback. I don't think USC's pass rush will be able to really bother Jacob Eason, who's coming off a 3-touchdown performance in each of his last 2 games, victories against Hawaii and BYU. I think the Husky ground game, playing behind a veteran offensive line, is going to be able to do damage against USC. Now, Utah was not able to run effectively enough last week on the road, but remember, Utah's big back, Moss, got hurt in the first half of that game. Washington has 3 backs. They have all been very productive. USC has not been able to stop opposing backs this year. Runners are averaging about 4.3 yards per carry. Eason, as I said, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on the year, 24 for 28, 290 yards, 3 touchdowns against BYU in a 45-19 win last week. I think Washington wins this game comfortably. So again, the complementary plays, I'm going to go with Temple, I'm going to go with Clemson, and I'm going to go with Washington in that order. That's how I like those games, with Clemson and Temple definitely right there in the top tier. I wish you well, guys, and I'll talk to you again on Sunday when we do this again. Good luck, everybody.